And we're live. Hello, everybody. Most of you know I'm Molly Gordon, and I am really happy to be here today with all of you, including Linda Pransky and Eirike Grunde Olsen, and the rest of you to have this conversation about how can, a little background noise coming in, how can a conversation, how can insights into the way mind works, how can understanding the way our human experience is generated moment to moment, how the heck can that help us out? And not just how can it help us out personally, because this understanding has helped me out personally in huge ways. But from the very beginning, I had the question, so what? Is it enough that Molly Gordon feels better? You know, there's a lot going on in the world, and it didn't feel, something in me wasn't satisfied unless I could connect this with what's going on in the rest of the world. And lo and behold, Linda and her husband, Dr. George Pransky, and Eirike and Mara Gleason from One Thought launched this amazing conference that's going to take place in Oslo at the end of this month, toward the end of this month, called The One Solution. And we're going to look at what that relationship is between the insights we can have personally and the shifts we need on a planetary basis. So welcome, Linda, and welcome, Eirike.
Thank you, Molly.
Yeah.
Thank you, Molly.
Well, you know, for me, I think this conference in Oslo is probably going to be one of the most exciting things I've ever done. And what happened is that really it was Eirike Olsen and Mara Gleason. You correct me if I'm wrong, Eirike, but it was the two of them that really kind of started looking in the direction of what I would call looking up and out into the world and thinking, well, wait a minute, you know, we're looking at how this helps us personally, and it does. I mean, I can testify to that, how much the understanding has helped me personally, but why not the world? Why aren't we looking out and up at the world, to the world in the direction of understanding the principles and how that could be of enormous help? But so they started the ball rolling in this direction and got George Pransky and myself and Aaron Turner involved. So really it's the five of us that have been talking and creating this event. Do you want to add to that, Eirike?
I would add that this is my fascination just lately in the last month, it's how quickly, once we lifted that conversation, that how immediate the response in us and our feeling was, and how immediate like mind presented us with opportunities and ways to go about it. And it really, like for me, it really took me out of the question, like out of the whole thing. Like I think before that I would have said like I had focused on helping people, but still there was a much more sense of what am I doing here? And this is kind of like such a big scale that I have to forget about myself in order to think about it. And that has been really fascinating. I think that the way, it's like with any learning, like you learn in correlation with the level that you're looking at, and the higher the level, the more learning you'll have at that level. So when that got upgraded, we just started I started seeing more about it that I didn't see before, and that just every week, every day almost just continues. Like I see more of how these principles really solve things that I kind of more theoretically saw but didn't really feel or got a sense for. So that's the only thing I would add, that the five of us and all the other people we have spoken to, that has happened. to X degree.
Mm-hmm. I think I may have shared last month when Mara and George were with us a story that shortly after I had my first insight into the principles, I was standing at the sink washing dishes. And suddenly I just had this insight that I could get involved again in social change, whatever it was, ending hunger, political campaigns. As a young woman, as a teenager, I was very involved in change and in the anti-war movement and in politics and in youth services. And I burned out. I just flamed out. And although I've continued to care, there's a way in which I've hung back all my life since then. And that's been a long time, like 4 decades. And I got it. I thought, somehow this frees me up to care again in a big way and to engage in a big way. And I didn't really see more than that. I just felt like I got this new lease on life, that this could be give me the freedom to care. Does that make sense to you guys?
It does. And I can relate to it in that this is a whole different way of going about social change.
Yeah.
It's a revolution. It's a turnaround. Instead of going outside and trying to fix things, which is what we do, go outside of ourselves and trying to fix the illusion, we're looking inside to how the illusion is created via thought. And understanding the inside-out nature of our experience. And if people who are into social change could just turn around and look at that and see it for what it is, it would make all the difference, and it would change the nature of the conversation. It would change the nature of the way they went about things.
Can you give us an example, Linda, of what that might look like?
Well, let's take it down to just say a group of engineers, a team of engineers who are trying to come up with an idea about a new, I don't know much about engineering, so I'm just going to use the word gadget.
That's good.
That their company is pressuring them and requiring them, and they have a deadline, and they have all of this pressure to create this new gadget because it really matters to the financial health of the company, to the bottom line. So they're in this meeting and they have all kinds of thinking about what it, how to create it and what it means and what, so-and-so's position is and the other team, and they get all caught up in their thinking. They get all out there in the details, and they get in a big snarl about the gadget. Now, instead of trying to fix the snarl of the interaction, if everyone saw that the snarl was created by thought, and they just hit the reset button and started over, and didn't think all of that thinking and all of the details and all of the snarl that they got into trying to create this gadget meant anything, and just started over with a clean mind, and just saw that their minds got messy and they could just start over and think differently, that would be an example.
Okay.
What came to my mind is that you have the one part of wanting to change the world and change society, and that is usually, if you look, maybe you'll look back to when you did that back in the day, Molly, but it's about going out there and doing a difference out there and changing the situation out there, or making it better out there, or fixing this problem out there. So all the problem solving, I'm just going to call it problem solving, is based on out there. Yes. Okay? And all the creative innovation is also based out there. So the innovation, the future even like positive way of thinking about not solving problems, which is like recreating a better future, it's with an assumption that it works a different way than it actually does. So you'll have innovation that's aligned with the understanding of the world. So when we see more, the problems we go about solving, as Linda says, some of them we won't bother with, other will just shift by themselves, and other will have much clearer solutions to.
Mm-hmm.
And the innovation part will be totally different too, because it's from another framework. It's not looking outside.
Because when people look outside too much, they hit walls. And when they turn around and look inside mind is endless possibilities of innovation and endless possibilities of creative thought. The people get distracted by what they've already thought, or they get caught up in what other people are thinking,
Mm-hmm.
instead of just turning around and looking at a clear mind that's available to all of us within the next moment. Thought is not concrete. Thought is not something that ultimately blocks us. It feels like it blocks us because it's connected to, feeling, to our consciousness. But once we cue into the gravity of thought that's really illusionary, and that you just bypass that illusion, and there you stand in a clear mind within yourself, and with all the possible new thoughts that are available. I mean, mind is a gold mine of ideas and possibilities, but we hang on to the old. We hang on to the past thinking. We hang on to whatever insecurities or grievances that come with thought that we feel for whatever reason we get hypnotized by it, and we have to wake up to that hypnotic state that we can get in.
Yeah. Folks, I want you to know I've muted most of you to keep background noise down, but we very much want you to be part of this conversation. And there are two ways you can do that. If your camera's on, you can go like this or like this and let us know you want to talk. If you hover your mouse on the screen, if you're on a computer, there's a chat icon at the bottom, and you click on that and you can send a chat. And I'll see that there's something there, and I'll know to unmute you and call on you. If you click on participants, also at the bottom, there's a place where you can even go cooler, and at the bottom of that list, you can raise your hand, and that will signal me. So there are three ways you can let us know that you'd like to make a comment or ask a question or contribute in some way to this conversation, because your presence is really important here. As I was listening to you, Linda, I couldn't help but reflect on a coaching conversation I was observing yesterday. I mentor coaches, and sometimes I listen to their coaching conversations and give them feedback. And this particular coach couldn't figure out what to do with a client that was stuck in her story. And it was so interesting because as I listened, I heard the coach continually ask the client questions that pointed her at her story, instead of asking her questions that pointed at her capacity to create something new or think something new. And as soon as I pointed that out, she went, oh my God, it was this huge light bulb for her. But it seems to me, I see more and more how I do this, how we all tend to do this in the world. We use our experience as a template for creating the future, and don't realize that we're using something already formed, already passed, and defining that as a limit on what's possible, when that came out of an unlimited place, and we can go back to that unlimited place and start again and again and again. I'm curious, as you guys have been having conversations, it's one thing, it seems to me, to have this conversation within a community of people that have some sense of what we're talking about and that it makes sense to. But how do you have this conversation, or what have you learned about having this conversation with people who have not heard these principles before?
Go ahead.
I would say it has surprised me sometimes of how, and it's not surprising in another way, like how easy it's grasped when we get in a conversation with people. Like if we're in a conversation with people, we could point it out, because people who wanted to change the world, if we talk to any organization about people who are out there doing good work, they have told us exactly what you said, Molly. At some point, they got burned out. There was too much pressure. There's too much stake. They get affected by it. It seems overwhelming. So we've seen that they immediately grab onto that, like, yes, this is what we've seen. So that whole field, I think, actually has seen a lot of what's happening. They don't understand how it has happened, and therefore they don't know what to do about it, or they go in the wrong direction to do something about it. But the first initial grasp of it and recognition of it, very, like, for people who are doing work, trying to do stuff in the world, very fast.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, go for Linda.
well, they're also, and this shouldn't be surprising, because we all are the principles, whether we know them or not. And there are people that are out there that are, for lack of a better word, they just are naturally, intuitively doing this. The people that are very successful out there and aren't burnt out are naturally avoiding the thoughts that I'll put it in my language, the thoughts that they've created that haven't worked, and they just naturally go to a creative process inside them. Yeah. They just do it naturally. They just don't get caught up. Hmm. And then, of course, there's all levels of that, or all degrees of that. But there are people out there that they understand the principles, and they act in a way that really orients them towards the possibilities in mind. They just don't know how to talk about it like this. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But when you talk to them, they go, "You just gave me a language for what I do.
Right.
That's what I do."
Yeah.
You know, I'm struck a number of years ago. There was a lot of conversation, and there may still be, I'm just not reading the same publications as I used to, but there's a lot of conversation about disruption in business and how it was really important to do something disruptive. And as I recall those articles were all looking backwards at how to disrupt and missing that disruption emerged, that it came out of the creative emptiness. It didn't come out of an attempt to disrupt, out of a defined thing called let's go out and try to disrupt something. And that there's been a misunderstanding so often. I also see this sometimes in creative clients who try to look at a defined creative process for their creativity. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, that's a description of something that's already over.
Well, I think there's a level of understanding where people like technique, mm-hmm. and they see technique as an answer because they don't have a better one.
Right.
And that when they have an insight about how it's just so simply that thought is in their way, and they just have to see that that's what's in the way. And when they have that insight at a deep enough level, you realize that techniques are ridiculous. Mm-hmm. You just clear thought. You just realize thought. You realize thought's in the way. It's just thought. And as soon as you bypass it, you're in clarity of mind.
Right.
And it's that simple. But it's not something that comes from the intellect. It's not an idea that comes from the intellect. The ideas of technique come, well, what are we going to do to get there? Let's create a form to fight the form.
Yes.
or let's create a form to deal with the form. Well, there is no form. Then it just creates two opposing forms that fight.
Mm-hmm.
But when you realize it's so simply just thought, but a realization is something that it's not something that you do. It's not something that you make happen, but it is something that happens.
Yeah.
People all the time. Realization.
Last night,
realization creates understanding, and understanding is what we use instead of technique. We use our understanding, but it's not something that we have to manhandle. It's something that's organically available and comes to mind.
Right. I was having a dream last night, kind of a half-waking dream, and I noticed myself dreaming, and I was in this dream, I was trying to cross a street. I think I was trying to drive across a street, and the traffic kept coming. And it was foggy, misty, visibility was bad. Some cars had lights on, some didn't. I was really straining to see these cars coming at me. And there was a way in the dream in which I was trying to make a break in the traffic happen by looking right. And suddenly I realized that I was dreaming.
Yeah.
And I realized that there was no traffic.
Yeah.
That there was no barrier to crossing the street. It was the most amazing experience. It's like, I didn't have to manage the dream. I didn't have to do anything in the dream. I just had to know I was dreaming.
Yeah. You didn't have to go and get a bunch of stuff or things or people to deal with the traffic.
Yeah.
Because you realized you just made it all up.
Exactly. And it was just like, whoa, that's so funny because I really didn't know it a minute ago.
Yeah. It's a really good metaphor.
And another way of saying that to me is that to me it's not I don't see it as exactly the same. I don't see it as it's instead of, but it's realizing that where technique comes from or where form comes from, so that you actually can engage the world, engage practical stuff that needs to be handled in the world. Like there are actual stuff that's happening that we are not able to handle as good as we could based on how much thought we put on top of it or how much we're not realizing what we just said. But I think the point that it's not that we're not going to engage in the world. It's that realizing my old movement coach, he called it like principles are like the master key. It opens any door. And instead of using different things for certain things, we're just saying that this is what explains all that's happening. And with that information, you can build stuff, change stuff, move stuff, and innovate and go into the practical world again. And the way I see it is almost like I look at the world, I close my eyes, I learn about how the mind works, I open them again, it looks different, and I go about doing different stuff. I close them again, I learn something new about the principles, open them again, the world looks different again, and I go about doing new stuff and new techniques or new ways of being in the world. And that's what we're kind of saying, that it's not a either or, it's just a different conversation. We are trying to point towards what that does so that the world you're looking at shifts, which allows you to move and maneuver it differently. Now, there are other people who are amazing at maneuvering and techniquing it and changing it and building stuff and being hands-on. That's the people we're trying to help, because when they see, they'll go about doing amazing stuff. So our conversation is more about lifting the level of conversation, lifting the level of perspective, and lifting the level of what we see so that it becomes clearer and we're not so fooled by stuff that's not real, and we see what's actually going on. And that has a huge effect out in the physical world, and anyone who's hands-on, practical, out there with human beings in crisis, in places where you gotta react, where you gotta do stuff and build stuff. So it's kind of connecting those two worlds, but realizing where everything comes from is at this deep, fundamental principle level. And out of that is the world that we see. And from that place, we are going about maneuvering and changing and doing our best.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's just a different conversation, and it helps all the other conversations.
Absolutely. I often find myself saying to people, I haven't learned a lot about what to do. I haven't actually learned anything about what to do, but I've learned a tremendous amount about what doesn't work and what you don't have to do. And that has raised my level of underlying well-being a lot, because I don't have to worry about that. And there's a great deal of efficiency. It's like, there's just so much I don't do, which leaves me a lot of time and energy and space to do the 10 or 20% that occurs to me that might actually have an impact on my world.
Yeah.
In a useful way and a helpful way. Just to remind people, if you have a question or comment, wave at me, use the chat button, or click on the participants button to raise your hand.
Should we poke on people though? Like, are there anyone?
Poke. Yeah, who would you like to poke?
I don't know. It seems like there's someone who want to say something, or not. I see people smiling, or all right.
It's not required, but you can.
Not required.
Yeah. We'd love to hear some other voices. So one of the things we might let folks know that's new this week is that the conference is now going to be live streamed. Do you want to say something about that, Eirike?
Yeah, we'll just say that we can send out a link for that, but that we are going to live stream it, and hopefully we could reach even more people that for some reason can't come to the conference. And also we're giving a few seats out to organizations like charities and people who are doing good work. So that's also a thing we're really excited about. Like we already have a lot of cool organizations jumping on, wanting to live stream it because they can't attend live. So
yeah.
Thrilled to do that.
And I'll add that to the replay page for folks as well. And you can find it at the One Solution event, I think, by clicking on tickets. It's now in there.
Yeah.
But that's huge.
Perfect.
Like, are any of you going? Any of the people listening today, are you going to Oslo?
I think Genevieve's going.
Joel's going. Roger, are you going? Yeah.
Roger's going, yay.
Fabian's going.
Gavin's not going.
Not going.
Karen's not going this time. No.
Not going?
No, that's awesome that you guys are going to go.
Yeah, Birdie is going? No, not. Okay. But
because it just seems so
certainly maybe. Yay. What's that, Linda?
Well, it just seems it seems so timely that that we're looking out into, the global community and looking out into the change makers of the world that are working to help.
Yeah.
It just seems like an amazing thing to do.
Well, I've been seeing more and more in my work in the last couple of months the implications of something George often talks about, which is all boats rise with the tide. And I did a group, a 5-month group, and I just watched those boats rise. And it was so interesting and so different from groups and programs I've done where there's been a lot of process and to-dos and exercises and work. There wasn't that in this group. I just watched people feel better, get more settled down, and start to do things differently in their lives. And it was like, holy crap, this works. It was very fun. And when I think about change makers in the world settling down and feeling better and coming home to themselves and to that greater intelligence, that just is phenomenally exciting to me, that level of commitment and creativity and passion could be supported by an understanding of their well-being and of their infinite creative potential. It just blows my mind.
That's a part like I really love. Like when I was talking with this one woman that's coming from the Norwegian Refugee Council, and she said two things. She said like, this is I see this relevant for when we're in field, like what we can talk to about people in the field about. But she also said hugely relevant for the people who are actually doing that work in the field. And me and Linda was having this conversation, like do we talk with the people in the field, or the people who are doing the work in the field, or do we influence leaders, or do we have the people create such a big movement that they influence the leaders? And I'm kind of realizing more and more like, yes, all of the above.
All of the above. No, but I think it's so exciting because, like you said, Molly, it's like all boats rise, and to have this room of people that are addressing global issues, people in refugee camps and just people that are out there, and as they start to turn around and see the role of thought in them, and then they go back and they teach that to the people that work for them, and then all boats do rise with the tide. It's very wonderful thing to think about for me.
Yeah, and just seeing some of it, like you carry it with you. So if we're not teaching it, learning about it, just you tend to be a little bit different because there's certain stuff that's not on your mind, and there's certain things you understand about the humans you're interacting with. That just you live your life differently.
Yes.
And this is the part that, when I think about it, I get goosebumps, and that's how invisible a lot of the change will be. Because it won't be when this person said this happened, or when we went this. It trickles everywhere, and somewhere we just notice that we feel different. The world feels different, and we kind of don't know. We can't point to what actually happened when, because that's what happened with human beings. They're like, I don't know what happened, but I'm different after I learned these principles, and the world's gonna shift gradually, not necessarily because we learn about the principles, because the principles work the way they do. And that's what.
Don't you think it matters though that people need to point others in a direction?
Yes.
Because that's what I'm hoping that's going to happen with these people that are going to be in the audience in Oslo. We're going to point them in a different direction, and then they are going to go back and point the people who work for them or live with them. They're going to point them in a different direction.
Yes.
That's what I mean, literally point them in a different direction.
Yeah, I kind of see that as a both and. I'm thinking about an experience I had yesterday. I had dinner with a friend who had sent me an email that it actually had to do with the Oslo conference. And she said, I just can't support what you're saying in your newsletter these days. Only God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit can solve the world's problems. And at first I was really, we're very close, and I got just a lot of good feelings and moral support from her, and I was just shaken by it. And at the same time in her email, she said, I love you very much, and I'm looking forward to our dinner next week. And so I just sat with it, and I just sat with it, and I just sat with it, and my feelings settled down over time. And I went to dinner yesterday, and as I wrote another friend today in an email, we just met heart to heart. I didn't try to tell her that her God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit were not a problem. And that my mind, consciousness, and thought didn't have a problem with her God, and I didn't think there was a problem, vice versa. I didn't try to explicitly point her in any direction, but I met her from a deeper feeling. Mm. And we had an amazing dinner. And she said some things during the dinner that pointed to how we were really talking about the same thing. And so I think it's both and. I think that the way we are in the world sometimes percolates out in that kind of invisible way through a feeling. And yes, the power of equipping others to have this conversation explicitly with the people that work for them and live with them, that would be great. Mm. Deb has a question here. How do those of us who are not going to Oslo start teaching or pointing others in this direction?
Well, if you want, you just teach what you know. You teach what you know about the inside out nature of experience. Whatever you know, and you can't offer more than what you know. You can't, and that's good enough. It's got to be good enough, what you know. And I think people think, oh, I don't know enough, or I don't say it right, or that's just your thinking and judgment about it. A little goes a long way.
Yeah.
So don't, because I know what will happen to me is that I'll have a really good thought. And then I have another thought that comes in about that thought that's an insecure thought. Like I'll have the thought, oh, I want to say this to so-and-so. And then I'll have the thought, oh, you can't do that. Well, you just got to know the difference between a secure thought and an insecure thought. Comes with the feeling. Just act on your secure thinking. If you want to share, just act on what you feel secure about. And when you have a thought that comes in and that's insecure, ignore it. Just ignore it.
Anything you want to add to that, Eirike?
I think just having that question automatically has her her mind going in a different direction. Like, so one part, just like, since it's just words and I can't have a conversation, but like having that question, she's going to see more about the relevance to the world and then the bigger perspective. And that's the automatic nature of this. Like she having that question and wanting to learn more, she'll just start conversations with people or listen to more stuff, and she'll see more about it. And that's the simplicity of that. It's very automatic.
Absolutely. And Deb, there are almost 2 years worth of these Hangouts on my website. And I don't know how versed you are. I don't know which Deb you are, how versed you are in the principles. There is a ton of really lovely information online. And again, at my website, there are links to many books and resources, and you can feel free to email for more. Klesia, Let me unmute you. There you go. Hi.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi. Um, I guess I don't know why my heart was beating really, really fast, but probably it's just my thinking. In terms of global change and making an impact, basically, personally, when you think in terms of global impact, the first thought that came to mind is, who am I to think of myself as a global leader, right? And then I remember of someone telling me, do all that you can. And as you do all that you can, then more be given to you. And I'll give you an example. I'm fairly new to the principles. I came across one of the books back in 2011. I've seen the Three Principles movies, look into that direction for a while, let it go. And then last year started looking to that direction again. And because I had an insight to start doing a show called Womanhood from the Inside Out, that basically is a YouTube channel, and I didn't grapple with the idea. When I had the inspiration, I sprang into action straight away. I know that that show is having an impact on the people that have been watching it. But when I started, my intention was not to have an impact at all. I wasn't attached to the outcome. All I wanted to do was to share what I knew at the time. And the interesting thing is that I have been transformed, and I have been transforming in this journey of committing to talking with people, learning more, and seeing more every single day. So that is what I would say. Do all that you can. And the more you do, the more will be given for you to do if you want to. Mm-hmm. If you want to lay back and do nothing, that's absolutely fine as well. Yeah. And that's my 5 cents.
That was a good 5 cents. I like that.
Good 5. I think it's worth 10, Kleja. Easy.
It's kind of what Eirike said, is that when he, at the beginning of the call, he said, look, I'm restating it, but I started looking in a big way, and as I looked in this big way, I started to learn in order to further my process and my direction and my movement in that area. It's like the more I looked, the bigger I looked, the more I had to learn, and the more I learned. And I think that's what you said. It's like you put yourself out there, and you evolved. Mm. It's kind of the more you give, the more you get.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
That's fabulous. That's really good.
Thank you.
And I think it's a huge point. Like, none of what we have done, it was stuff we knew. Like it's just been seeing something and then going, and then like putting some date in a calendar and then learning. Like that's his process, and that anybody can do. Anybody can learn. Anybody can begin going in a direction. And that's the simplicity of this. It's just like continue going, and anybody can do that, because we're not concerned about what's going to happen or in what time frame. We are going in a direction, and that's simple. Everybody can do that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Now, there was a question that Mark asked about the principles being a passive approach, that when you talk to people, the principles come across as a passive approach. Well, in my mind, the only reason they come across as a passive approach is because people don't understand what you're saying. In other words, the principles are not a passive approach at all. I mean, when you have a clear mind and you see what to do, you act. And it's but when people don't see what to do, it seems to me is when they get busy and do a lot of things that don't work, or do a lot of things that make things worse. So it seems to me it's only a passive approach if people don't understand that what clarity of mind means, and what possibilities can happen when you go in the direction of mind, I mean, there's so much to do that makes sense.
Mm.
Even your distinction earlier, Linda, about recognizing the difference between a secure thought and an insecure thought, and then act on the secure thought, which is the opposite of passive.
Mm-hmm.
But at least I can get very passive if I get wrapped up in my insecure thinking.
Yeah.
And there's a way in which I did use the principles for a while, or try to escape insecure thinking, which also made me very passive. So I was kind of looking for a way out, the way I was trying to look for a gap in that traffic in my dream before I saw that I didn't need a way out. It's okay. And then the secure thinking started to come in and I could act.
Hmm.
And
See,
Mark
when
has
people have a clear mind, they don't think about it. They see they see a thought that works. They say, "Oh, this will work," and they just go for it. Or they go to whoever they need to talk to about it and have a conversation. So it's like, I mean, you see what you do, and you don't think about it. You just do it.
Yeah. Mark has a follow-up, and it's, can we talk a little about how to clear your mind? How do you get to hear your wisdom?
I could speak a little bit to that. Like, because it's a realm of the same question he asked before, and well, it's that kind of activity, to call it, if we're talking a passive and active, like that kind of activity doesn't really create anything new. So it's not that you can't do anything actively with your mind. You can do a bunch of stuff actively, but only at the same level. So you can play around in that area and change stuff, and like you could like both on with your thinking and in the world. Like I could try to think this and try to think that and try to change this and try to change that, or I can try to go for a walk. I could try to do a lot of stuff, but I can only do it within what we're talking about now, which is a different level. So as soon as I understand something that's not that type of activity, it's an automatic approach, a built-in approach, something that's already there when you're not having so much activity or so many tabs up on your internal computer. That's when the automatic gear sets in, and that's what we're speaking to. So I do think you can absolutely do something active, but it can only be at that same level, and that's not what we're speaking to.
And I'd like to address his question about how do you clear your mind. See, the mind wants to clear. And the only reason it doesn't clear is because we try to clear it. In other words, we don't like our experiences, so we try to clear our experiences. Well, if you leave your experiences alone, your mind will clear. But we won't leave our experiences, and we don't want this, and we want that experience, we want this experience, we want that experience. So we're always addressing our experience. We're always managing our experiences because we want to have the right one. If we just allow experience, our mind will clear. Our mind clears of experience as if we leave our experience. If we leave ourselves alone, our mind will clear.
Karen.
I'd like to speak a little to the passive. I think it's interesting because to me, everybody who's on here is not being passive. We're all part of the excitement and the inspiration. And to me, this has been super exciting. And everywhere I go, I'm talking to people, whether they're Three Principles people or other people. And I think it's the inspiration that all of us are seeing to take this to a much bigger thing.
Yeah.
And being part of this conversation and being part of, seeing this is just a global level of consciousness rising, so to speak. So I think we're all not passive. Passive, and it's just a term. We're just using that as saying it's a form, but it's like you're already involved. You're here.
That's really good.
Yeah. And that's the main reason why we're doing this. Like why we're doing it. It's just like we have felt the inspiration and know that inspiration is contagious, and that's a good thing. And with people with the principles connected to that inspiration, it just lives its own life. So that's the funnest part of this, I think, what you just said.
Thank you guys so much for your questions and your comments. It's very rich.
Yeah. Wow, thank you, says Mark. Good.
It's quite an amazing thing to begin to let your experiences alone. You know, and again, I'm thinking of my experience over the weekend, getting that email that just really tugged at my heart, and not pushing away, not trying to manage, not trying to think myself into a healthy state of mind, not trying to solve the problem of what my friend thought, but just being with whatever it felt like and hanging out for a few days. And by the time we got together, it was just the most beautiful thing it could be. And I did have a clear mind, and I hadn't done anything to get there. Joel, hey, you're unmuted.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I
I know you. You were just in La Conner.
I was. Our ships passed, but it was great to see you. Just as I was sitting here, it occurred to me that as thrilled as I am for the Oslo event coming up, and all of us are gathering our enthusiasm for it, I'm finding myself kind of making a demarcation line in my mind, like, oh, after Oslo, I'm going to be able to be really effective in the world. And then I realized, well, I'm living a lot of days between now and then. And what, maybe we could just touch on one thing that we could start living the Oslo understanding now. Is there something that we could?
But you are living that. I mean, I think what Karen said, in a way, it speaks to this. You are living the Oslo experience now.
Yes.
You are. You're living the Oslo. This is the Oslo experience. The inspiration of this idea, the momentum of it. You're in the momentum of it. Yes, you are. You're in the momentum of the Oslo experience. With us now. I mean, what else can you do?
I really get that. That's well received, and I don't. Maybe it's just a trick of my own mind. It's just like I'm thinking, like, well, once Oslo happens, this new way of like applying this to the world, the switch is going to change, and it's going to be even more so than the enthusiasm we have now.
Well, we have to see what happens. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what would be next. See, that's going to be like the gift, the surprise. Like what's going to we don't know what's going to happen after Oslo, but we'll see when the time comes. See, it's like you'll see when the time comes what's next.
Right.
It's like you don't know the future until you get there. So you do Oslo, and then you see after Oslo, there'll be another landscape. We'll see something else. But we can't see the something else now.
Got it.
The only thing I would add, because I recognize the feeling, is sometimes when I have a thought and it doesn't help me, I still keep it. So you were like, oh, great, I'm going to do so good at the conference. And then you had a thought, oh, maybe I should do something before the conference. But that thought didn't help you. at all. Like it just didn't, like no new thoughts. If it was a helpful thought, you would go, oh, I can do something now. And then you'll have a bunch of ideas. That will be a helpful thought. So what you had there was what Linda was talking about, like a good thought. And then you had some kind of thought that just creates more problems for you. Like that you're supposed to do something before the conference. Because if it was a good thought, you would just be doing it. Yeah. So just keep following that.
No, that's really good, Eirike, because it's like, you got to catch this stuff. It's sneaky because it's like you have a really good thought. And then like Joel, you had a really good thought, but then you got insecure that you weren't doing enough. Well, you are doing enough.
Yeah.
And if there was more to do, you'd see it.
Oh, yeah, of course. It's the trusting of the seeing.
Because if there was more to do, it like you're doing enough by being involved, by showing up for this webinar. I mean, you showed up and good for you. And you're going to Oslo. And after that, you'll see something more you can do or not. And if it's not, that's okay. Maybe it'll be later. But it's like, for whatever reason, I know we get insecure. We're not doing enough. That's just an insecure thought.
Yeah.
See, like, what can I do? Opens your mind up to possibilities. If no possibilities come, oh well, not right now. But it doesn't require you to be insecure over the fact that you're not doing enough. It's so funny how we will have I'll talk me. I have a thought, a really good thought, and then I get insecure about it. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
It happens to me all the time. I have a great thought, and then I'll go, wait a minute. Is this the right thought? Or is this too much thought? Or maybe there's a better thought? Or what should I do with this? And it's like, really? Really? It's like, it's so funny, It's so funny. We all do that.
Wow. So even in the land of security, there are landmines everywhere that you can.
God, you should live in my head.
Yeah, and mine too, Joel. And I could tell you, it has nothing to do with the amount of things. Like I could be doing 100 things this week, and I could still feel I wouldn't do enough. Like that thought would have the same energy and feeling with me, and that's why it's good to notice the difference, because then you can apply it across the board, even when you have done one thing or 1,000 things. But I get fooled by the same thing, and it's ridiculous every time I do it, but it has nothing to do with the amount of stuff. Like that's the biggest thing I realize.
And it's so funny because the thing is, you gotta see yourself as funny. You just gotta, because otherwise you just go, oh my goodness, shoot me now. You gotta see yourself as funny.
Oh, well, I've had a lot of experience with that.
The personal mind, what we do with our thinking and how we, because the thing is, thought is our worst enemy and our best friend.
Yeah.
Both our worst enemy and our best friend.
Wow, we're already near the top of the hour, so I want to do two things. I want to say that next month, Michael Neal will be my guest again a week earlier than usual on June 3rd, Friday, June 3rd, to talk about his new book, The Space Within. And I'd like to invite Eirike and Linda to give more information about how can people find out more about the One Solution event.
Yeah, well, the simplest way is if you're into social media, is to check out the Launching One Solution. Just search that on Facebook. And then we're on Twitter, we're all on YouTube. We have all those. And then onesolutionevent.com is the place to go. And also, send us an email. Like we've gotten so many emails about people wanting to, getting inspired about this. And we love, the more we can build and more we can get back to people and we can do this together, the better. And if not, you can come to Oslo, and if not, you can do the streaming this time. Like, this is not actually a conference thing. It's a shift going forward thing that we're into. So there's going to be more, but like there's something that we are feeling about being there at kind of like, we see like at the birth of the first 2-day full expression of this. We've kind of had the little trailers and small tidbits, but really want to go full on in 2 days. So that's why we're doing the conference, but we really want to go beyond that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Linda and Eirike, for making time. I know you guys are pretty busy with this thing. Thank you, everyone else, for showing up. The replay will be up. I've got a few things I need to do, probably be about 6 or 7 hours, and it'll be live on the same page where you found the link to join. And you always feel free to email me if you have any questions. And thank you all so much. Be well. And here's to Oslo.
See you there.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.